Good evening and welcome to everybody on this fairly chilly Sunday evening compared to what we have been used to. Good evening, Dave Oti. Good evening, Wayne. How are you? And Andy Best, good evening to you. Lawrence, good evening to you. I'll say good evening to Pete, but we know he's here. And Brian McLaughlin, good evening to you, sir, and welcome. And Colin Izzard, good evening and welcome, Colin. Mark Pritchard, hello Mark, how are you? And hello to Steve Robbins. Hello Steve, that was a great link that you sent me today. Ruby Claire, good evening Ruby, I'm honoured, how are you? Trevor, how are you? Good evening Trevor. And welcome, of course. Just trying to catch up on the Wood Turning by Barry, good evening. Burned Hickory Signs, good evening to you. Martin Gentleturn, hello, how are you? And welcome. Goblin Industry, good evening to you. Alex and Wild Things, good evening. Terry Bartlett, James Crawford, welcome to you all. Candy Candelaria, sorry, good evening to you. Let's go down a bit further and see. Nikolai Dahl, good evening to you. And welcome. David Nicol, good evening and welcome to you as well. I think I've covered everybody now. Just about. Yes, I think so. Well, I hope you're all well. I shall be doing my introductions of my loyal and stalwart pit crew, the team behind the terrible productions that I tend to make. Neil M, good evening. How are you? And welcome. There's a few more, but I can't see the names because they haven't said anything in chat.
Shed's asking about your back.
It's on the mend. I'm due to go back to work on Wednesday, a couple of days' time, 3 days' time. It's not right, but it's a lot better than it was. I just keep doing these exercises. I do about 15 minutes worth of various exercises every morning. So it means if I've got a 5:30 start, I'll have to get up at 4 o'clock. So I get my exercises done. Rob, CP, good evening to you and welcome. Maggie Billier, good evening to you, Maggie. RPM Woodworks, good evening. Greg Alexander, good evening. Gary L. Is that Gary L as in Gary Lowe? I wonder. Dave Gatton, good evening to you and welcome. Dewey, good evening, Dewey. Dewey Shed. Peter, the Parkwood Turner, good evening to you and welcome. Oh, I missed out Gav. Good evening, Gav. How are you? Welcome. I think that's about covered. RPM Woodworks, I think I said good evening to you. If not, good evening again. Harvey Klein, good evening to you. Douglas Mungum, good evening. How are you? I think that's Jennifer Staunton, Lady Jennifer, she's in. All bowed, Jennifer. Good evening, Jen. How are you? Keith P, good evening to you, sir, and welcome. The Art of Wood, good evening to you as well. I think I've covered everybody. And if I haven't, accept my humble apologies. Okay, it's nearly 7:30. If I have to sit down or go to the break for a little bit, you'll have to accept that, I'm afraid. Patrick Sassman, good evening. Kevin Newman, my old buddy Kevin, good evening and welcome to you. And also to Nigel Oram, good evening to you. And Peter Willis, hello. Patrick Sassman, good evening to you as well. And welcome. What I intend to do, I will tell you now. It's 7:30, it's the witching hour. Well, good evening to everybody and welcome. My trusty pit crew will be looking at the chat now. I'm not going to be looking at it anymore, well, for a while anyway. Before we commence tonight, as usual, I'd like to introduce my Earworms, the pit crew, seeing that Pete's on camera.
Hi everyone.
Pete Ravenscroft, Twisted Trees, and also Mark the Gentleman Woodturner, Mark Beckett.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well.
And these guys will be keeping an eye on the chat, as well as making sure I got the right camera. And what I'd like to do tonight, I was saying to the lads before we actually went live as such, that in future, it's got to be every 2 or 3 weeks, I should think I'll be able to do a live, so you'll have respite for a couple of weeks in between, is to do a project. I haven't done a project on live from start to finish, so slight change, unless there's a certain situation that requires to do a similar type of live like I'm doing tonight. So what I intend to do tonight is to go through and hopefully answer a few questions on bowls that I get. I'm not a bowl turner per se. I don't specialize in bowls, but I enjoy turning bowls and I have my own ideas on them. And I get quite a lot of questions about various things, holding methods, designs, and obviously technique as well with regards to turning the outside of a bowl, what shape's it going to be, and how to turn the inside of a bowl. And indeed sanding and finishing, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on the sanding and finishing tonight, but we will touch on it if time allows. So what I intend to do is to go through my process, my thought process, what I consider when I'm looking at a bowl blank and what I'm going to do with it. My two earworms are more experienced, let's put it that way, on in bowl turning. Certainly Pete is, and Mark has in the last couple of years has really done a lot of bowls, and he has been mentored by Wayne, who is possibly, apart from maybe Stuart Batty, one of the quickest guys I've seen turn a bowl from start to finish. But we all have our own way. It's not a race essentially. Wayne's got 30 years experience. Stuart's got that plus more. A lot of us haven't got that experience, and a lot of us don't turn that quickly. Speed is not as essential thing as getting to the end product and overcoming any problems you get while you're turning. So if I go to the old...
Apparently, just stop you a second, apparently there's an echo when the earworms talk.
Right. So that...
Turn NDI off on the audio.
Ah, that's why. Okay, NDI is now turned off, so you shouldn't have an echo now. Can somebody, before I carry on, just check that there isn't an echo?
We should be coming through just the once now and not echoing. I think we're about 20 seconds behind, so.
Hi, Colin. Is there still an echo?
Echo.
Okay, now that's good. Excellent. Thank you. It's me. Okay, so what I was saying earlier on, I'll go to the overhead, and no, I won't. I'll go to the camcorder. This is what I would term, and please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and the lads will convey it to me, and I will answer them as soon as I possibly can. This is what I would term a standardish bowl blank. It happens to be Afromosa. The species is not important for what I'm trying to say here. It's a fairly standard bowl blank. It's relatively round. There aren't any inclusions in it. So it shouldn't cause too many problems from the basic way of starting a bowl. Now, the way I do it might not be the way that everybody else does it. But the main thing, when you're turning, you want to get not a breakneck speed, but you want to get a decent speed to get a nice cut. So if we start the lathe up with this, and this is about 13.5 inches by 3, you can see it needs to be squared off, for want of a better word. It needs to be made uniform on the outside. But I can get up to about 6, just starting to vibrate there. So go back a bit there. We're talking about 700 RPM. So what I like to do, and if I go to this one here, what I like to do is to true up the edge first, and that allows me to get things a bit more in balance before I do anything else. It's not essential, but I just feel that it's a good idea. So I'll be using for most of this a 1/2 inch bolt gouge. Don't forget to put your safety gear on and stay out of the line of fire where you can.
Quick question from Mike Davies there for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Can you turn bowls or natural edge bowls from birch?
From birch?
Yes.
Do you know what? I have never turned birch, but I have seen, if you mean silver birch, I've seen some nice stuff from silver birch. Apparently it turns very well. Maybe my pit crew have opinions on that. I can't speak from experience.
I've turned a birch bowl. Yeah, it turned really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does cut well. It's not overly pretty normally, but it does cut well. Yeah.
There's your answer. Indeed, you can turn birch and you can do a natural edge as well. I don't know, how does the bark stay on? I mean, like with ash, I always feel that ash is pretty stable bark. Is birch stable as well? If you want to do...
Not great. It's not a great bark. I mean, being an international colorist, is just like yourself, Mike, you would know if you turned it that it does take color quite well.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that'd be something. That's going to be a species I have to avoid. Right. Okay. Swiftly moving on. We'll go to the camcorder. No, we won't. We'll go to the overhead. So basically, you want to be looking at truing up the outside. Now, you want to stay out of the way of the line of fire as much as you can. Now, the important thing is treat it like a spindle with regards to you want to get bevel contact, and you want to take nice easy cuts and let the wood come down onto the edge, so you don't need to force it. My bevel is pointing in the way I want to go, and I'm just going to go along and nibble away. And I've taken a bit longer than I normally would because I want to show you what I'm trying to achieve. I'm just going along very, very quietly, no rush. And what I'm trying to do here is to give some stability to my bevel. Now, if I was doing this on my own, I might be a bit more aggressive. But I'm trying to show you, you don't need to be aggressive, and you don't have to hold your bowl gouge for grim death. Just nice and relaxed, and let the wood come down onto your edge to get this. The thing is, if you hold it too hard, and let's say you do get a slight catch, that catch is going to be magnified, and it'll be relative to how hard you're holding your gouge.
Nathan Carr has just joined. Hi, Nathan.
Hi,
Now
Nathan.
I don't know if the microphone will pick this up. This part here, this first part now, I've got virtually no bounce. So I've got a bevel. I've got a nice solid base for my bevel. Now I just move forward, nice and slowly. Put a bit more, give it a bit more edge. I'm not pushing any harder. I'm just altering the position of the gouge in respect to the wood. And that is allowing me to take a slightly bigger cut. It's all right, my headphones are falling off, excuse me. Right, okay, carry on. Now, why am I getting that bouncing? Because I am not letting the wood come down. I'm pushing. So if I just let the wood come down onto the edge, I'm putting no pressure on the movement at all. I'm feeling when the cut has been made, and I'm just moving forward. Let's just stop there and have a look. I mean, it's not perfectly level, but it is a lot of it. The bandsaw marks. This piece of wood was actually very kindly given to me back in 2016 at the first UKIS up in Coventry by my good friend William Hunt. So thanks for that, William. It's only taken me 5 years to get it on the lathe. So now we've got that, we can just nibble away here, or we could go there and just take our time and just go forward. My advice, just keep nibbling away till you get to the end. And the reason I move my hand out of the way is the shavings are very hot. Not because I'm pushing, I don't think, it's just the wood.
Rob Woodsley from Woodsley Sonoplast joined us.
Oh, hello Rob. How are you, mate?
Very good.
Welcome, my Canadian friend.
Hey, Rob.
Now, before we go any further, another thing to remember is if you've got a smock, put it on. Because...
It's a good point to make here, Mike.
Yep.
If you've got a smock, put it on.
Yes, that's a very good idea. Well done, Mark. So basically what Mark's saying, ladies and gentlemen, is if you've got a smock, put it on.
Wally.
Trouble is, it's too late now because I'm itching now. Okay, so overhead again. So now we've got it virtually round. Now, it's not perfectly round there, but I'm quite confident that I was on just 710 RPM now. If I should want to, I'm now up to 850, 870. I mean, I wouldn't want to turn a bowl this big any bigger than that, any faster than that anyway. But the point I'm making is that we've gained another 150, 160 RPM just by roughly truing at the edge. I mean, most of this is going to be going anyway, so there's no need to get rid of these little dents, but you've got the piece behaving as you want it. And then the next thing, and the only reason I'm doing this, I'm not going to be obviously turning the whole bowl, is just to go through my basic method of getting the bowl to a stage where I can start to think about shape and actually doing the turning. The next thing, now this is not essential because all this is going to be going, but if this was out of true, as I'll show you on a blank I'm going to be putting on in a minute, then it's always a good idea, in my opinion, just to square the face up. And the other good thing is always make sure your tool rest is at the right height. And don't worry if it's not at the right height when you start. Even if you have to stop 2 or 3 times, it doesn't matter. Get it right. Don't try and force a way through if you're not happy with it. And again, and I can go to camcorder on this one, and all you're doing is just to the left of the nose, and you're just dragging it across the face just to even up, nice and slowly. I want a piece like this.
Joined. Hi, Ben.
Good evening, Ben, and welcome.
Hi, Ben.
And all you're doing here is just try, if you go really quick, you're going to get ridges. But again, it doesn't really matter because, hang on a minute, something not right here. That's weird. Okay, but you're going to be turning this away anyway. But all I'm doing is showing you my way of looking at it, and then you go to the end, nice and steadily, moving your body.
It's good practice, actually, even if you are just going to be turning all that away, so that you can learn to match your tool speed of travel versus the speed of the bowl as it turns over the edge of the...
I think it'll show it here actually. If I come do it very quickly, if I come across quick, you can see. Does the camera pick that up? It doesn't on this very well, does it? There are ridges here, and if I go at a rate that is commensurate with the speed of the wood, as even as I can, if we just go to there, that is quite smooth, whereas there are ridges here. I don't know if the camera will actually pick it up to prove the point. Whoops, wrong way. Yeah, there we go. You can see ridges, and that's just because I was going too quick for the speed of the wood, the rotation of the wood, and here much better because I was going slower. So that just proves that point, if you like. Okay, and then we get to a stage now where we decide, are we having a mortise or are we having a tenon? On a bowl like this, which is quite large, quite wide, it's 13.5 inches, I personally like to see I'll put a mortise in there, and the type of, hang on, let's try and get a good example. Right, okay. Similar to that, where you have a shelf, for want of a better word there, and I haven't got a problem with showing the chucking point, but on something like that, where you've got an OG shape, hang on, am I getting that right? There we go. Got an OG shape on that bowl. I quite like that small foot there. Makes a statement and makes it sit nicely, in my opinion. The other way of doing it is obviously having no chucking point, reversing the bowl, and having a completely smooth foot. So that would come off a tenon. The only thing I would say to you is that if you're turning wet wood, I personally prefer a tenon if it's a wet turning, because the fibres are being compressed and you can always increase the force at which you're putting the chuck jaws onto the piece, because it will change, because you compress the fibres when it's wet, so you need to tighten it up again. A mortise on wet wood, I'm not a great fan. And if you've got punky wood or wood that is not completely stable, again, in my opinion, a tenon is more suitable, because if you're pulling with a mortise and it's on expansion, you could actually lose its moorings. But everybody has their own preferences. But wet wood, I would normally use a tenon. That's me personally. Now on this particular piece, I would go for a mortise. So if I mark the mortise out, I know that the mortise on these jaws are 69 centimeters, say 70 centimeters.
Right, that's a big chuck.
Hey, millimeter. Let's go millimeters. Let's go millimeters. Okay, so I would go 70. So that's 35. So if I get 35 here and mark here, it doesn't have to be exact, but as exact as you can get it is better, because you get a perfect circle. So that there approximately is my mortise. And what I would do then, that would be my mortise, so that would be there, and then I would have, and look here, where would I want the shoulder to be, the raised shoulder? I would think somewhere there-ish. So that's what you're looking at, and that is your task for this bowl. If you're going that way, you would hollow that piece out there. This would remain raised, and then you start to form your shape from this outside edge, which is going to be the foot. Everybody has different ideas. Now, the thing is, once you've actually turned the bowl, you can actually improve by reverse turning it, either by reverse chucking it. You can either use a button jaws or cold jaws, call them that way, or a friction drive, and you can actually make a nice sort of valley in there, if you like, as opposed to having a sharp edge there. So that indent there can be made into a nice curve, and you can still make it look very nice. But I always think it sits nicely when you've got a foot like that on a largish bowl. But that's just me, obviously. So again, you would start to take the corner off, and literally standing out of the line of fire again, just let the wood come on and start taking the corner off to get some idea of the shape you're going to go for. Because don't
Andy
forget,
H for turning. Andy H.
I'm sorry?
Andy H is for turning has joined.
Hello, Andy. How are you? Now, I've started to take it off here. Don't forget that you're going to be all this wood here is going to be reduced, obviously. So you need to decide on the shape you're going. You can go for a standard shape, which is similar to that, okay? And if you go for that standard shape, when you get to a certain, you might think, oh, hang on, it might look better with a little bit of an OG on it. You have the material to do that. But then you obviously have to make your mind up at some stage where you're going, and then that's the shape you go for. As I say, one other thing as well is, and I'll just use this as an example, I like to push cut as much as I can. I know it's awkward, but I like to get a push cut in as soon as I can, because I personally get a better cut than doing a pull cut. If I'm doing a pull cut here, you can get rid of a lot of material by dropping the handle, using that left wing. You can take some very aggressive cuts. Now, it doesn't matter at this stage because it's not finishing cuts. You're getting rid of material. But there
Mike,
comes...
we've had a question from Mark Pritchard.
Yes, Mark?
He says, Mike, do you have the design of the bowl in your head that you want to turn, or do you just go with the flow?
9 times out of 10, I will have an idea of what I want to do. In other words, do I want what I would call a classic bowl? Do I want to do an OG? Do I want to do a trumpet shape? Do I want to have it coming in on this bowl here just goes in very slightly there at the top, and that's something I wanted to do. It could have gone over a bit more if I'd wanted it as well, but that was the basic shape I had. If I'm totally honest with you, this bowl here, which is an OG shape, started life, it was going to be, if I can find it, I've lost it now, what I call a trumpet shape. There wasn't going to be an OG. I was just going to do a straight sort of like that. But as I got there, I thought, oh, I don't know, an OG will look good. So yes, I have an idea of what I want to do, but here we are. It was going to end up like that, but I decided to put an OG on it. So I have an idea of what shape I'm looking at. It's not always poetic license, but sometimes necessity means you've got to change the shape if you've messed up somewhere. But in answer to your question, and I never answer questions quickly or slowly, I have an idea of what I want to do, yes. But design changes do come into effect quite often. This is where we have, in my opinion, we have the advantage over the pro turners and the professional bowl turners because they go to a design. And obviously that hones your skills, etc. But that's bread and butter. For me, if I want to change halfway through, I can, unless I'm turning something specifically for somebody to a design they want. You ask my wife, she says she wants this, and I come in with that. She goes, that's not what I asked for. I said, well, it doesn't matter. It still looks all right. Doesn't always go down well. Okay, so going back to the pull cut is a very effective cut for getting
Before you get back to that,
yeah, okay.
A question that you might be better answering later on down the show. John Knight is asking, as a new turner, how do you know what the best size for your jaws when doing a tenon?
Okay, there is no best size. They are specified with the type of jaws that you purchase. The manufacturers will have the optimum jaw size. If we take these, for example, these are medium gripper jaws, but the theory is the same. When I have done a video on this, and other people have as well. People say, "Oh, my stuff keeps flying off the lathe." 9 times out of 10, it's because your tenon has not been cut correctly to the right dimension. So what you get, if you bear with me, I think I've got something I can from a previous live. Bear with me a second. Oh, did I keep them or did I not? Yes, I did. Right, okay. Now, this is a tenon, okay, and you see the black marker pen and the white bits or the plain bits in the middle. Now, that represents the jaws clamping on your tenon. In other words, the black area is contact, where the jaws are contacting the wood. You're getting 4 big points of contact, which give you security. If you make the tenon too big, there are the black points around the tenon. Those are your points of contact. So you can see, and that's for the same chuck, okay? You can see there that you're getting less points of contact, so that you're not getting a what I would term a solid, safe hold on your work. So the answer to your question is, whichever jaws and manufacturer's jaws you're using, there will be an optimum size where it forms a perfect circle, if you like, because every set of jaws is cut out of one piece of wood. So you've got the kerf of the saw or the blade that is cutting that quadrant, and then that distance, and it's normally about 5 or 6 mil, something of that ilk, between the jaws for a tenon, that is. If you've got that distance between each jaw, you've got it virtually at the right size. Hopefully that answers the question for you.
Yep.
No more at the moment. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So going back to the pull cut, the pull cut is an effective cut.
Go on, Mark. You do it. You do it, Mark. Go.
Change go.
Okay. There we go. I knew they had some use, not a lot, but some. I was waiting for them to tell me because I did know.
Yeah.
Let's go to picture in picture. Yeah. Okay. So a pull cut will get rid, and don't worry, I'm not going to waste this piece of wood, but I'm not, I will be doing some butchering to it. It gets rid of quantities of wood very efficiently. Okay, and I can go bigger than that if I want to. I can take up to the width of my wing, and I'm not putting any pressure on the tool, but I can take really big bits of wood away. But might be my technique, I don't know. It's not a bad surface, but I know if I get to a stage where I can use a push cut, I'm going to be getting a better cut. A better surface and a better cut. I will use the pull cut to get rid of lots of wood if I want to, and then as soon as I can get, and normally from here, once I've got to about there, I don't in lives turn my headstock because a lot of people can't turn a headstock, so I don't see the point in doing that when people can't replicate it. So I do it traditionally over the lathe. It's easier with the headstock turned, obviously. If I go to the camcorder, I think we've covered this basically. I think it's Stuart Batty and Jimmy Clues as well. Stuart Batty essentially, where you will stand here and you are out here somewhere to do your pull cut, your push cut from here. And it's a case of like a rowing motion, and you keep going around like this, and you should never actually touch your body that way. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice, but it means you can get your push cut started instead of having to go like this, which you could do. But if you have the headstock swiveled, you can still use your body, as I like to do with most of my turning, and you can get that nice glide around the bowl. But I think a push cut gives a bit more control as well, in my opinion. But that's just me. And I mean, Pete is a bowl turner of many years, and Mark is a very good bowl turner as well. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Tell the people what you think. Well, it must be wrong then. It must be wrong. It has to be wrong.
Question from Ben.
Yeah.
He said, if you're using the full width of the wing, how come the tool doesn't catch and want to rotate?
When I said, I didn't say nearly the whole.
Yeah.
Nearly the whole, not the whole wing. I mean, this wing. If you look at the wing here, I know what you mean. If you go there's the. Does it show it there? There's the wing. Excuse me. Now, if I'm going, I can go to, let's say, 2/3 of that wing, providing I've got bevel contact, providing I've got the right stance, and I'm approaching the work at the right angle. All I have to do is slightly lift my handle to engage more of the cutting edge. When you start getting, if I can show, when you start getting sort of this business happening, you know that you're on the edge of what you're doing at the time, because what's going to happen is going to start to get a catch. But you can feel when you are going a bit over the edge, if you like. If you do it very slightly, increase the size of cut. I wouldn't, for a first time or for the newer turner, trying that. I wouldn't try it with a good piece of wood. That's what I would use in my practice sessions. And I would have the lathe going fairly slow, because it doesn't matter. It's not the quality of cut, it's the type of cut. And you can see what you need to do to get that cut to work for you. And then as you get more confident, you increase the speed, and then finally you can use it on a piece of wood, a decent piece of wood. But like in spindle turning, I keep on saying about muscle memory and practicing is important. It's very important in bowl turning too. Possibly more so, because the end result of a catch with a bowl can be more prolific than on a spindle, because spindles are between 2 points of contact. Even if you have it chucked up, you're normally going to have tailstock support. One thing I haven't done, which I should have done here, with something like that to start off with, bring up the tailstock for extra support. It's not being namby-pamby, it's being sensible. And what I was going to say is that with regards to practice, is just practice those cuts and take a little bit of a bigger cut and see what you need to do to maintain control and take that bigger cut. But don't force the tool through the wood, because it's a recipe for disaster. As I say, with a bowl, you are going to get not serious is too strong a word. The catch is, if you get a catch on a bowl, it's going to be a little bit more than it would be on a spindle. Let's put it that way.
You're going to know about it.
Yeah, you got different forces at work. The outside circumference of that bowl is traveling a lot quicker than the center, and 9 times out of 10 you're working from the middle to the outside, so that the rotation is increasing. So by the same token, almost, when you're going into the center of a bowl, when you're hollowing out, you slow up your rate of travel, because the wood is spinning a lot slower, and I'll show that on a small bowl later on. So you slow up your rate of travel, because if you keep pushing at the same rate that you would on the outside, or your traverse rate the same, you've got to start getting juddering, because the wood is not coming down on the edge. You're pushing the edge through the wood, or trying to. So it's got to be jumping. And by the same token, when you start at the center of a bowl, like I just did there with regards to facing off, you should slow up your rate of travel towards the outside, because you'd be going too quick for it, because you're going to be going quite quick in the middle, and if you keep on going at that speed on the outside, it's going God knows how many times faster on the outside. You ain't going to be able to cut it smoothly, but it's all practice. It's very easy for me to stand here and say this is what you should do. I'm not saying I do it all the time myself, but at least I have the ability to know what I'm doing wrong, which sometimes could be more frustrating because I should know better. Let's put it that way.
Mike, we've got a quick question from Candy Candelaria.
Yeah.
On your, she says, on your gouge, are you using the U-shaped tip or the V-shape? And is one better than the other for bowl turning?
I've only used what they call the parabolic shape, which is that. That is a parabolic shape. There are V. I think Thompson do a V bowl gouge, and then you have the U shape. I have got no experience in 10 years of turning with any other bowl gouge shape other than the parabolic. I personally, I mean, you hear a lot of people, professional bowl turners, say that the parabolic is the one that they use. I have no comparisons to make, to be honest with you, but I certainly haven't got any qualms against the parabolics, because they seem to be the industry standard, if you like, of shipped tools. If I'm wrong, please somebody say something. I mean, Pete, Mark, have you turned with V's and U's?
No, I've only ever used the parabolic.
I have used a V. They're going out of fashion. Most of the tool makers now don't use them. So there's only a couple left that still make them. But it is a matter of preference, really. They all work.
Me. Yeah. Is there an advantage to one or the other, in your opinion?
Not really.
The V, from what I've heard, the V shape can be a little bit more grabby.
Right.
Yeah, it
can. The parabolic is a bit more forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do a 40-40 grind without a parabolic.
Right. Okay.
And I use that, so obviously I need a parabolic curve. But I mean, a V shape. If you use a V shape, you're used to a V shape. It works just as well. You just got to be used to it.
Yeah, sure. I've just noticed my friend Graham Light Cunning Stunts has arrived, or has been here.
He's been here for a while.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Graham. I didn't say hello because I didn't know you were there. My lads were just more interested in making sure I had the right camera for some reason. Don't know why. Okay. So I think that's all I'm going to do on that particular blank there. A standard bowl blank. But going back to the gentleman that mentioned about the cuts, you don't have to take big cuts. My opinion, when you started, even now sometimes, if I haven't been turning a bowl for a while, I will take really light cuts. I'm not against the clock, as I would be on a live tonight. I just take my time. And when you take your time, you can see what you need to do to get the right cut. And believe me, it's a lovely feeling when you get that cut correct. So I'm told.
It's something we've touched on before with other subjects, is we're not production wood turners.
No.
We're hobby turners.
Yeah.
We don't get paid by the piece. We don't get paid hourly rate. We don't get paid piecework. Enjoy it. Take your time.
That's right.
Practice the cuts and enjoy each cut. Simple as that.
If I liken Steve Jones, who most of the UK and indeed abroad know Steve Jones as the master, one of the masters of the skew, because he uses it every day for his work. Bowl turners turn bowls extremely efficiently, and the reason they do that is if it's their living, time is money, like with anything else. So they learn the most efficient way to turn a bowl, and obviously get a good result at the end of it. You know, we can all turn bowls fairly quickly, but they look like they've been hacked out with a chisel. And I don't mean a wood turning chisel. People like Wayne and Pete, who have been turning, and many other people who've been turning a lot of bowls over the years, you get into a system for your style of turning. But when you're learning, or you're intermediary, or you don't turn bowls as the major item of turning, you need to practice and look at things like you would to if you want to turn a finial or you want to turn a goblet. It doesn't matter, or a box. They all have their own technique, and each technique will change depending on the person, but the basic rules still apply. The old thing of ABC, it anchor, bevel, cut. It's a very basic ABC, but it doesn't matter what you're turning. Those three rules, if you like, and I don't like rules, but they are founded rules that apply to any type of turning. And bowls, as we said earlier on, can have a much nastier bite back than a spindle. I'm just going to take this off the lathe, and then we'll go to another type of blank. Now that was actually on a smallish faceplate, and if you use a faceplate, use all the holes that are provided in the faceplate for security, is my advice.
And don't use decking screws or drywall
No,
screws.
no.
Good steel, wood screws.
Now what I'm doing, I'm using a worm screw, and I won't say not a fan of worm screws. I like faceplates personally, but nothing wrong with a worm screw if it goes in deep enough, and this is a big blank, and it's easier for me doing sort of a demo like this, if you like. Little worm screw on the back there with a faceplate, fits into the C-jaws nicely and very secure. Now, here is an example of when you should bring up tailstock support. And there's an example of an elbow stabber cover. It's a walking stick rubber, and it just fits over there. So if you forget to take it out, like I quite often do, you ain't going to get stabbed in the elbow, because that's not fun. Okay, so if you've got a piece like this, because we don't all have the luxury of having ready-made bowl blanks, if you like the one I just showed you. You can turn them, you can on the bandsaw. Sure, I've cut that on a bandsaw to make a bowl blank. Now with that particular blank, would I be going for a natural edge bowl? Possibly, in which case this would be the top, so I would actually put a holding point in here, and then put a tenon or a mortise on this side, because this would become the top of the bowl, if you like. But for this, I'm going to be going from the bark up to the front. Now, up to the top, I should say. Now, obviously, you need a slightly different technique, and different rules apply here to a point, but it's the same thing. You do not want to force your tool through the work. So again, turn the lathe down to nothing. Now, if I show the overhead here, this will actually show you how out of kilter this is. Okay. Now it's out of kilter this way, it's out of kilter that way, and obviously it's out of kilter this way because it's a natural edge as it stands now. So you've got a lot of different out of rounds there. Now, again, would I go for this first, the edge? Personally, no. Reason being, it's not going to make that much difference because the weight difference here is going to have more effect than this little bit of out of round here because it's fairly round. And this piece here is going to have an effect on how it turns, on the speed I can get. So my first course of action me personally, is to attack the front. So we again get the maximum RPM that you can. Notice I've got the tailstock up for support, obviously. It shouldn't be that bad because it's relatively round. Okay, just starting to get a very, very slight bit of vibration at 630, which is not too bad. I mean, I've turned stuff, I'm sure other people have as well, where you start off at 180, 200 RPM and it's clunkety, clunkety, clunk. So again, anchor. Now, you can't get a bevel on here, so you've got to be nibbling. So what you want to do, you can see the ghosting. You're not in a hurry. You just want to start very gently. And your goal is to get wood where you can actually get the bevel to ride on. Now, I'm not actually doing a pull cut here, although I'm standing here. A pull cut to me is this way, when my body is over here and I'm pulling. I'm not doing that. I am pushing my right hand, I don't know if you can see, yeah, to a point. So all I'm doing is trying to establish some solid wood. And I'm absolutely putting no pressure. I'm not forcing anything. I'm just letting the edge do the work, basically with the weight of the tool. Not me pushing and not me holding on to grim death.
Somebody said to me the other day, Mike, a good way to explain that is if the point of the gouge is leading, it's the push cut. If the point of the gouge is trailing, it's a pull cut.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very good. That's fair enough.
Point first, it's a push.
Yeah,
Point
if you're going this way,
yeah,
that's very true. See, you learn something every day. Now, I don't
My turn. Camera, Mike.
Actually, not too happy with that. Hang on a minute. I just got to change the thingamy-bob.
Go get out of it that way.
No, it's too. Is that better?
Infinitely.
It's looking a bit. That's better, isn't it? Yeah, that's not quite as bright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, so I got it right now, so I'll just move the camera. Okay, so again, you can see here the cut there. The surface is quite good considering all the air. But if I started to, and this isn't a hero move, I'm just trying to show you. If I start in there and I start to push hard, okay, I'm hanging on for grim death, and it's bang, 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 bang. Still not too bad a surface because I'm such a wonderful turner, but believe me, I am pulling stuff out there, and it's dangerous. There is no need for it. Just nice light. Let the wood come down. I know I say the risk of sounding boring. Let the wood come down, and actually, if I work it out here, what I should do is just move the tool rest a bit. If I'm working on this bit, which is what I'm doing now, I've got the handle fairly low, and I'm just letting the wood come round. There'll be plenty of time for me to do nice big thick cuts once I've got a surface that I can work with. It's nice and easy. I'm not doing any pressure whatsoever. And I'm just coming around a little bit, slight bit of shaping, and off the end. And already it's starting to be shaped, and I know that as I go around there, I can get the shape I'm looking at, and then I will decide whether I'm going to put a tenon or a mortise on, and carry on with the shape I've got in my head. But when you're doing this, the point I was trying to make is, because it's air, do not rush the cut. Just look, you can literally, I've got hardly any pressure on this tool at all. Only pressure is down to the tool rest. I'm not you know, standing on it, it's all very light stuff. Because if I get a bounce, I'll try and get one here. That's bouncing across there, isn't it? Because there's no pressure down here. I'm not holding the handle hard at all. I'm holding the handle where it could be like a golf club. It could be pulled out. It's firm, but it's not like this where I can't get it out. I can move it, but it's just there. And let the weight of the tool do the work. So just a couple more cuts, just nice and easy. And it is much more educational, if you like, when you're doing something like this, because you're not worried about losing your gouge or losing the wood. You can look at where the cut is coming off the edge, and if you fall off that cut, you can ask yourself without too much problem, why am I falling off the cut? Okay, I'm going in like this. Okay, I'm going in, look, I'm totally wrong. I'm going in like that. Now, why am I getting a big cut like that? Because I'm going in, I'm pushing into the wood. Now, that, if I just move my body and I move the cut, so the bevel is pointing in the direction I want it to go. When I was doing that cut, it's pointing, if you like, up here. So I've got an inch of wood that I'm expected to take off. It ain't going to happen. If my bevel is pointing in the way where I want it to go, in other words, out here, then I can start by taking small little cuts, move my body around, keep the cut on the same part of the edge, start to make a bit of a shape and stop and do the same again.
Mike, would it be better with the overhead? We can see the...
Yeah, we'll change the overhead.
There you go.
Okay, so what I was saying is that big cut there is the bevel. When I got that big cut there, and it was a judgery cut, almost a catch, the bevel was pointing, if you can see, let's do it with a ruler. There's the bevel, and that's about where it was going. So I'm expected to take all this wood off in one cut. If my bevel is pointing in the direction that I want to go, which is there, then I'm going to here from there. And that makes more sense, does it not? So we go that way, and then we just move our body around to keep the shape that you want. Let's say this is the shape we're looking for. And all I'm doing is putting downward pressure onto the tool rest. My right hand is... I can't get back far enough. My right hand is literally... all it's doing is guiding with the help of my... If I come here... this isn't working out very well. Bear with me a second. Here we go. All that's happening is that my body is there and I'm moving round. There's no pressure on this handle at all. The most pressure I'm putting is downward pressure through the tool onto the tool rest. I'm not pushing with any force at all. So I want my bevel going the way that I want the cut to go. Now, this is a fairly large cut, but I've got no pressure. And I'm just moving around the work, letting the wood come down onto the edge.
You're using the weight of the wood onto the edge of the gouge to do the work.
The worst thing, excuse me, I'd always wear a respirator when cutting any sort of wood. No, the biggest problem, and I'm guilty of it, as I'm sure a lot of the newer turners are as well, excuse me, is taking too big a cut. Forget the fact about the RPMs, nothing. You're taking too big a cut. You want to get it done. There's no rush. take it slowly, because number one, the cut quality will be improved, and it also gives you an opportunity to understand what you're having to do to get that cut. How many people start a cut off and it starts off well? Once you get that bevel contact, it goes, and then as that cut progresses down the piece, whether it be a bowl and even a spindle, it gets worse. Something goes wrong, the wheels start coming off. Why do they come off? They come off because you are not in exactly the same position you were when you started the cut, with relation to how that tool is being presented to the wood and the pressure that you're putting on that tool. Because a lot of people will push or pull with their hand. This hand is purely to put, this is bowl turning now. I do use my fingers a little bit in spindle turning, but that's a bit different. But bowl turning, this hand, all that does is put downward pressure. All the movement is with either your hand, your arm, your right arm, or your body. And that doesn't do any guiding at all. And you'll find as you're going down a piece, when you start to get juddering, it's because you're pushing. Jimmy Clues, Stuart Batty says that. I find that very uncomfortable. I put my hand on top. Even if I do that, the pressure is only going from there. It's going down the length of the bar. It's not pushing, it's not pulling.
When you're turning a spindle, then you certainly going from square to round, you put the speed up so that you're spending less time in air. That's not an option with an out of balance bowl.
No.
So you have to spend more time, more concentration on keeping the tool in the same line when you come back into timber again.
Yes.
So it's just
and that
a
is difficult.
move more slowly, more carefully.
Yeah.
And pay attention to where the tool's going.
And that I find is the most difficult part about it. I hate to harp back on about it. On this elm bowl I did finish today, there's there is an inclusion just there, and that is rock hard. And I was getting, you get the telltale, not a groove as such, but you get that, you can tell that it's not a smooth finish off the tool. And it's because because that's so hard and the wood around it in proportion to that is soft, you're taking that little bit more off that softer wood either side of that. So if you've got inclusions, again, density of wood changes if you're turning a burl, whatever. But be aware of that. And it's the same thing as when you get tear out. The tear out normally occurs on the end grain, and in a bowl you've got end grain, side grain, end grain, side grain. You've got two parts of end grain. I go over here, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but for the newer turner again, here you've got side grain, you've got end grain. Sorry, you've got end grain, end grain, side grain, end grain, side grain. So you've got two different types of density of wood, and you're coming across each one twice in a rotation. So, it does have an effect, and you'll always find that your raised fibres and your tear out is going to be on the end grain because they're basically not supported fibres, whereas end grain is. So I don't see the point in going on much more with this, but just to say again that it's important, and again, another thing which I find important, and people, if your tool rest is too low, like this is, okay, that's about an inch too low, right? Now, I'm going to find that I'm having a problem cutting. It's bouncing. So what's wrong? My tool rest, oh yeah. Oh no, I'll carry on. Don't carry on. Stop the lathe, put your tool rest to the height you're happy with, and start again. And if it's too high, you can lower it. Now that's better for me, so that's fine. Because when people ask me, and other people too, what's the right tool rest height? It is not the height of the tool rest that's important. What is important is the height the tool rest needs to be to allow you to cut on or just above centre. Now that has several factors. It depends how you hold the tool. You might be one of these that holds it relatively horizontally, just with a small angle like that to the horizontal. You might be somebody that likes to have it down there. Well, if you have it there and have it there, look how that changes. So the tool rest has to compensate for that to get that to be cutting on or above, just above center. So if you have a low style of turning, then your tool rest will have to be a bit lower than it would be if you had a more upright style of turning. Yeah, to keep that cutting edge on or just above center. And obviously, if you're using a smaller diameter tool, then you're going to have to raise it slightly to get that sweet spot on the cut. So it's not so much about the height of the rest should be, it's the height the rest needs to be to allow you to cut on or just above center. And that depends on the tool you're using. Right. Are there any other questions on that sort of a thing? What we're doing? No? Good.
Yep, we're good.
Well, I would like to say to the newer turners as well, don't be afraid or put off by air turning like this. You want to get a fair bit of speed, because then you are less likely to go in with your tool, into the wood and get a catch. But try on smaller pieces, and when you get the speed right, it should be a brrr, not a and you'll find with very light cuts and good guidance of the tool that you'll get that cut really smooth, and you can get some nice shapes, and it gives you a bit more practice on tool control. Because I won't say on a standard blank, tool control is easy, but what I'm saying is if you can get your tool control on something like that, you're more likely to take that back to you to a standard blank and not push too hard and not try and get too much done too quickly, because you've got to be a little bit more wary, because it's so it sometimes is a good way to get your speed of turning to the right level. Okay, so we'll remove this guy. But the thing is, with turning, you've got to enjoy it. That's the big thing. You have to enjoy what you're doing. Now, I was going to put this chap on, but there's not a lot of point really. But there is a situation where I don't really, or could I? Yeah, I could actually. I'll put that on, take the faceplate off. There's quite a few cracks on this, and you can see I've been treating it with it's going to be a practice piece anyway. And if you get a piece like this, use it to practice. And you never know, as you get further down, you might actually get something out of it in the end. But this piece will not be displayed anywhere, so I will use this to practice cuts and so on and so forth. Let's take the old screw chuck out. I'm not sure if did I do it for this? Yeah, I've got a very small tenon here actually. Mortise. I don't think it's for this set of jaws, is it? Or is it? Yeah. Now I wouldn't advise using. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to bring the tailstock up for this, just to be safe. You can see here, if I go to the overhead, you can see here I've got about 70% solid wood for my mortise. Okay, it's not advisable to do that. It is much safer to have at least 90, obviously 100% solid wood if you can, but I wanted to keep that fairly shallow because I want to use this for practicing. So let's, if you stay out of the line of fire, it should be okay. Now here's a situation where, okay, we've got it on a mortise, so it's in the chuck. I've got the tailstock up, and the same method, if you like, to get my speed up, let's say it was out of true, would be, and this is fairly out of true actually, but let's go there, would be to drag across the front. Now I'm too low here. Do I carry on? Why should I? Stop the lathe, bring up the tool rest. And just to just bring it down. Now there are schools of thought that say, why waste time facing off the front of the blank? I wouldn't go any further than that personally, because it's all going to be turned away anyway, or most of it's going to be turned away. But if it's a case of turning that to a more concentric plane to give you more RPM, then it's worthy doing it. If that is not an issue, then yes, you could just start hollowing out without doing that. So again, the problem you have is if you're turning with a tailstock up for support, if it was a much bigger blank, etc., the problem you have there is obviously you're going to be restricted in the cuts you can do, but you can get quite a way down. Your main problem, obviously you can't go past there because you're going to start. Well, that's not totally true, because especially with these tools, if I want to be really silly, I can now turn that virtually with the tool there and start.
Clive Williams has got a question, Mike.
Yeah.
He says, what's the criteria used in deciding either a tenon or mortise? Although he did type Mortimer.
Oh, Mortimer. Oh, the Mortimer mortise. Yeah, a very famous mortise indeed. No, I touched on it earlier on. If it's aesthetics, it depends on the type. That's a big word for me, isn't it? It depends on the bowl and the shape you're going for and what it's going to be used for. I said earlier on, I quite like a foot like that. I have no issue with somebody saying, "Oh, you must have held it in a chuck there." Yeah, okay. I'm not a magician. I can't do levitation, so I need a form of chuck. But there are instances where it's nice not to see the chucking point. Yeah. So that was a mortise. This was a tenon. The only reasoning on that was I knew I was going to have a foot like this. So when I answer to Douglas earlier on, I do have some idea what I'm going to do at the end. So I use a tenon. On this, I wanted a foot there, so I decided I was going to go with a mortise. There are a few caveats, I think. If you have a mortise, you must make sure you have sufficient wood here to take the pressure of expansion. The wood needs to be good, sound wood. I am going against that by doing what I'm doing on this ash blank. I should have made the tenon a little bit, the mortise a little bit deeper, and I should also have turned a bit more wood away before I did my mortise. But as I say, it's a practice piece, so I'm not bothered about that. It's going to be between centres, basically, chuck and tailstock. But it's good practice always to make sure you have good sound wood where you're forming your mortise. More so even than a tenon, because if you've got cracked wood or wood that's a bit punky, your tenon, providing your tenon is big enough, and by big enough I mean deep enough, where you get a good hold, you have the option every now and again, you just tighten down a bit because you're squashing the fibres. So I said especially on wet wood, but if you've got a slight bit of cracking. I was just going to
say the other thing would be with wet wood, make sure you use more so than ever a tenon other than a mortise, because
that's my opinion. I mean, the
wood will give when it's green. Yeah,
it will. I mean, even and if you've got softish wood, I mean, ash is fairly hard. If you're turning a softish wood, let's say something like chestnut, sweet chestnut, that's to me is very soft and powdery wood. If you're using a tenon on that, even you will find that you will be able to get another quarter of a turn after a little while, because the fibres will compress. It's not bad practice just to check your anchoring points periodically, whatever wood you're using. But more so in wet and soft woods.
Dave Rosie's put in the chat, end grain bowl, always use a tenon. End grain anything, always use a tenon. Never use a mortise on end grain.
Yeah.
And in summary, I would say, if your wood is in the least bit suspicious of not being absolutely perfect,
Tenon.
use a tenon.
Yeah.
If your wood's absolutely perfect and you're doing a fairly thin piece, then you can get away with a mortise.
Quite agree.
9.5 times out of 10, compression, i.e. a tenon, is better than expansion, i.e. a mortise.
Quite agree. I mean, this wood here, I used a mortise on this. It's an exotic. Not quite sure what it is. I think it might be Babinga or something. But anyway, whatever. It's hardwood. So I have no issues with the tenon. It's quite a thin tenon, quite a mortise. It is quite a shallow mortise. But you will get to know that sort of situation with more experience. No hassles putting a mortise there. That is spalted beech. Okay, it's a three-sided bowl, and I always put a tenon on these anyway. I wouldn't want to put a mortise on this, even that size, for that sort of a turning. I wouldn't be happy with the security of a mortise. It has to be a tenon, and it has to be a good size tenon as well. Okay. So
Mr. 74 said he split a tenon along the shoulder. That's because you've over tightened it.
Yes.
We say tight, but
firm.
We say that meaning firm.
Yeah. And the other, sorry,
will break.
Go on. I've got to say the other thing as well. For those in the UK that have got Axminster sea jaws, be aware they haven't got a dovetail on the internal. So for a tenon, you don't do a dovetail. It is a parallel tenon, and it has a lip at the end, which right by the shoulder of your piece. So I always use a thin parting tool to make a little gully there, so that grips down. But I make no excuses. For the first 12 months of me turning, I did a tenon on my sea jaws. I did a dovetail on my sea jaws until one day I looked at it. I thought, you know what? They're not dovetailed. So they're dovetailed on the outside, but they are straight on the inside for a tenon. Okay, because don't forget, if you're doing a mortise, I mean, even that, which is ash and it was solid wood, there's a lot of meat there. Okay, so it's pulling out and there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of wood there. But even with that amount there, if I really cranked it up, I could split it. So you don't have to do it white knuckle, firm, and just keep checking periodically that you can't, whatever pressure you use to get it as you want it, if you can move it a quarter of a turn during your turning, then you're doing good, because you're just hinching it up to that same pressure. But as Pete says, too much and you can actually split it. And the same on a tenon. Okay, so the inside of a bowl. A lot of people, I won't be able to get low enough, I don't think, in the time. My name's not Wayne. There are various methods of turning the inside of a bowl, or turning out the inside of a bowl. I quite like going just to begin with, just getting rid of wood, and getting a feel for the wood, getting a feel for the type of how I'm approaching the wood. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Now, this is what I was saying earlier on. You start doing your cut at the beginning, and I'm not going to bother making this round at the top. If I'm going to, let's just get this relatively.
If Mike is making any sense to you tonight and you'd like to support the channel, if you look at the top of the chat, there's a buy me a coffee link where you can buy Mike a coffee and support the channel. All the money goes to his expenses employing me and Mark, so you know we aren't cheap.
And I do they don't cost a pittance, I can tell you that. Okay, we got a few cracks here and a few bits of CA glue and God knows what else. But if you're turning, I'm gonna just double check this, make sure. Take nice light cuts.
Brian at Hartwood Turning has joined us.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, Brian. Yeah. Okay. I think we're okay for that. Forgot I was going to show you now. Oh yeah, that's right.
Different method of following.
Yeah. So no, it's okay. I thought I heard a little crack, but I've got my earphones on. It might have been static, so that's why I'm bringing up the tailstock. Again, the same rule applies, and I'll go to the overhead for this. The same rule applies, is that the direction that your bevel is pointing is going to determine where your gouge is going to want to go. So while I'm just gently taking out the middle, it's not that critical because it's facing there. It's not going in this way at this stage. So I'm just letting the wood come down. Keeping, not rubbing the bevel as such. I've just got bevel contact to guide me.
The bevel is basically the steering wheels of the gouge. Where it points, the gouge will go.
Now that is the speed that I should be cutting this wood. Not as I was just doing, and I did that to prove a point. I'm taking almost as much wood as I was then, but I'm going a lot slower. And let's go to the camcorder. Now, if you look at this is not a finishing cut, but the finish on that, from that there to here, is pretty good off the tool. For me, it's excellent. But the point I'm making is, if I do this, push in, I'm not going to get a decent finish, and I'm also likely to get a catch. Don't forget, I've got the tailstock up, which I wouldn't normally have.
Steve Madden's in, I would do.
Oh yeah, welcome.
Felicity WT's joined as well.
No, you can't see unless I put this one on. Yeah, okay. It's a bit far away, but hopefully it's not going to be any good. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. That's no good either. Okay. I was just trying, if you can see the direction of the...
yeah, we can see that.
The flute. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Now, if I wanted to have this, and forget the outside not being true, if I wanted the wall thickness to be there, okay? And now I want to, let's just pretend that this is the shape I want to follow. So I want to follow that shape down here. Well, how can I do that? The only way I can do that, just put the elbow stabber cover on. The only way I can do that is to have the bevel pointing in the direction I want to go. So I want to be going down here, don't I? Straight down, basically. A bit like a goblet, okay? But it's a big goblet and there are much heavier forces at work. So don't try and go in like that because you're going to have a recipe for disaster. So what you do, or what I do, is I will tickle this away here. Just start to go in. The bevel is now pointing over here. So I'm going in that way to get rid of wood that I know is going to be going at the end anyway. There's the line that we're working from. Now, bearing in mind we're only doing 450 RPM, if I was turning at 800 RPM, I could go through the wood quite a bit quicker. Now, I want to start, I'm exaggerating here, but I want to start following that shape. Now, if you'd imagine that shape would be like this, I want to start following that shape. Still too early, but I've got quite thick walls. If I was going, which I'll show you on another piece in a second, and I'm working my way down, again, I've got to exaggerate. I want to keep as much meat in the middle as I can for stability. So now I can change my angle of attack a bit. So my bevel is now, and don't push it in, let it score the wood. So go in like this, just let it score the wood, then twist slightly to get a bit of bevel, and it comes off. Not enough bevel. I'm not pushing, let it take it.
Can you shift your ear an inch to the left, Mike?
No, I've got the bevel. So I can go in, and I'm going in quite steeply. And I can do it again.
Mike, can you move your head to the left a
Oh,
little?
sorry.
Thank you.
No, I'm exaggerating there. I've got a little catch on there. You have to get rid of that wood. I'll do that now. It's important. You must get rid of the wood. Otherwise your wing will catch on there like mine just did. Okay, so I'm starting to go in now at more of an angle, but the point I'm trying to make is that that angle is going to be determined by where your, let's get a fresh edge, where your bevel is pointing. So the object of the exercise is to keep on increasing that angle, that bevel.
Mark,
Where it's
to leave.
pointing.
See you later, Mark.
See you, Mark. Cheers.
Thanks for the questions.
And again here. Twist and go in. Now I'm virtually vertical. Sorry, parallel with the outside. And this is only to show you I'm going down at virtually parallel to the outside, and it's a case of creeping up on it. Now this sort of thing isn't too bad. We can get away with that because it's quite a large bowl. Now if you want to do a thin bowl, which is not something I particularly do very often because they're not practical almost. But if this, it's only a little fella, but he's got a bit of an OG on him. He's got a couple of inclusions, but it is a practice piece that might come out to something that'll be worth keeping. I don't know. Okay, now see how it's running. That's fairly good. Now, if I wanted to have this bowl with a thin wall, what I need to do firstly is trim the end off. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay, now if I go to the overhead, my goal, if you like, is to, let's just say we want the wall 4 mil, whatever, is to follow this shape. Okay, now do you want to follow the shape or do you just want to go down? I like to follow the shape, so it'll be an OG shape on the inside, which is a good exercise. So again, what I'm doing, there are several ways of doing that. If I want to have this, hang on, that one there. Okay, if I want this wall to be, let's say, that thick. Okay, it's not super thin, but it's quite thin. The walls are going to be quite thin. Now, I learned this. I say learned this watching a Jimmy Clues video, and I do use it sometimes with goblets as well. If you want to follow that, you can use your parting tool. I'm not saying you should use it on a bowl, but this is the point I'm just trying to make the point. Now that's starting to follow. It's given me an idea of how wide my wall is going to be, and my parting tool is in the same direction as the wall. Okay, so it gives me a guide. So I've got my starting point. So now I could start to hollow, get rid of some of this wood here. And yes, I'm doing what I told you not to do, taking aggressive cuts. Okay, now I want to start going down, so I take some wood here. Don't forget, I've got an added advantage here. I've got a backer for my bevel, so my bevel isn't going to go anywhere. So I can start taking wood here. Now, what I was saying about the bevel going in the direction, now I can go down. I'm putting no pressure on, just easily going through. That's going half of the wing, okay? And all I'm doing is just going that way. Now I can pick up the cut. I've got the support of the bevel and just go down. I can look outside, see how I'm going. And I'm following that contour. Okay, there's a little ridge there. We'll get rid of that because Mark will moan about it. Okay, so I'm working my way down, and that's what I shall do all the way to the bottom of that. And I won't bore you with it on this video, I might on another one. But the point I'm making is that I'm keeping the mass there, even at this early stage. Now, what I would have to do there is go in again. So I want to take a little bit of wood away here. And take a bit more here. Now I've got that bit there. Right, now I can work on that. But before I work on that, my advice is work on that little tiny bit there, because when it gets too thin, you come back and try and rectify it. It ain't going to work because you're going to get vibration.
Just coming up at 5 to 9, Mike.
Okay. So now we have got that part finished. And what I would say to you, and the more experienced bowl turners might disagree, is when you've got that to the width you want, never go back there apart from sanding.
Yep.
And the further down the bowl you go, it becomes more apparent that you need that support of the mass of wood in the middle to give you stability. So work your way down sort of bit by bit with as much support as you have, making sure you clear the wood away in front of you so you don't catch the wing, but leave the mass in the center. And that way you can work your way down with a nice finish ready for sanding. Because even if you go back, when you've hollowed out to the width you want, the thickness you want, even if you go back with a negative rate scraper, any tool at all, even if you put your hand at the back of the bowl, which I don't advocate, but if you do for support, you're going to get some form of vibration because it'll be too thin, it'll be flexing. So you work your way down with all the support of the wood in the middle as far as you can. That's about it really, I think. So any questions at all? Apart from
We've been pretty much covering questions for
Good.
you as we've been going.
Makes a change. Makes a
Would
change.
like your input though.
Makes a change for you to do his job, doesn't it, Pete?
Well,
Hey.
yeah.
You know,
What
it's
was your input though? Because it started off with Neil asking about using angles other than 45 degrees for deeper bowls.
right.
i.e.
Okay.
60 degree.
Okay.
And there's been a discussion about bottom feeders and so on and so forth, but I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah, my take is this. My half-inch bowl gouge, which is this on both ends, it's a double-ended gouge, has an approximate, and we're not talking exact science here, approximately 55 degrees. Okay, that is not a secondary bevel. It is because I had it at a different angle a while ago, and I'm too tight-fisted just to hog the wood away. So as long as I've got an edge, I'm happy. That edge is even more prolific there. It looks like a secondary bevel. It's not. It is just waiting for me to get down there when I'm sharpening. So I use 45 degrees on the pro edge. 45 degrees, start again. 55 degrees on my half-inch bowl gouge and my 3/8 bowl gouge. They both have 55 degree approximate bevel angles. I do have a straight over grind bottom feeder, which has got a 65 degree angle on it. I use that very occasionally when I've got a deepish bowl, and I just can't get because it's not just the deepness of the bowl, it depends how big the bowl is diameter wise, because what happens is if it's a smallish bowl, that's about 3.5 inches deep, and I manage that quite happily with a 55 degree. Now, if it was a bit bigger and another 2 inches deep, I might have a problem with the 55 degree, just getting that transition at the bottom, and that's where this chappie would come into play. But I use it very infrequently, but it is handy when you need it. So my 45 degrees, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you know, Stuart Batty was a much better bowl turner than you. Uses 40. He uses 40-40. That's fine. To me, what I do, I like a 55 degree angle generally, and then 65 degree when I need it at the bottom.
Stuart Batty uses 40-40
Yeah,
for
no.
three quarters of the depth of the bowl. Then he uses a bottom feeder for the bottom.
He does.
Yeah.
The
40, you can't get a 40-40 round the bottom.
No. That's even more acute, obviously, than my 55. And that's the problem, is when you get to the bottom of the bowl, and a lot of people say, and again, I hold my hands up, I'm not an expert bowl turner, but the mechanics are the same, or the theory is the same. When you start getting that bit of a judder, your bevel, what's happening is your bevel is starting to almost... when you're going down that deep, the bevel is, so basically you're on the edge of the cutting edge. You've got no support at all because you just can't get round there. And that's why people have a relief cut to give it a bit more ability to go round there. That's fine. But I think 55 is pretty good. Why? Well, I don't know if they do now. A lot of manufacturers, everything's 45 degrees, you know. It's a pretty standard angle, I suppose. But I just find that 50, again, you get used to it. You know, you get used to whatever.
I've changed my mind on what I would advise new turners.
Yeah, go on.
And now I would say the manufacturers apply them at 45, keep them at 45 until you've learnt enough to want something different.
Very good advice. And I tend to agree with that as well, because at the end of the day, when you're a newer turner, you know you have nothing to compare anything with. So go with what you get. Obviously sharpen it, because it very rarely comes sharp from the factory. Keep that bevel angle, and then very relatively soon into your turning journey, you'll realise it's not shortcomings, but it's lacking with something. Something's wrong here. I'm not getting the smooth, and it could well be your bevel needs to be a bit more acute. A bit steeper. It could be your turning style. It could be a load of different things when you start out. So don't immediately think, oh, I'm going to get a 55 degree angle on my bowl gouge and I'm going to turn bowls without a problem. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So as Pete says, start with what you're given to begin with, and then with experience and fairly quickly you'll realise the shortcomings of that particular grind or whatever, and then do a little bit of research and refine it to your turning style and what you want to turn, you know.
Now, I'd add to that, once you wear out a gouge to the point where you can't put it in the jigs anymore, look up every silly thing that you've ever heard on the internet, every stupid idea, grind it to that and see what happens. Because why not? That's what you wear. That's the whole point of wearing gouges out, is that you can play with them.
Yeah,
When they get to the end of their life, change the angles, experiment.
I couldn't agree
Find
more.
what you like.
Somebody would say to me if they came here, why? No, not that one. Why have you bothered spending time and wasting CA on a piece that is not going to be used? Well, that is going to be, and that will last me a long time, believe me. That is a great practice piece. It's got lots of cracks in it, and if the cracks get worse, I'll just put more CA in, you know.
You'd say to them, it is going to be used.
Yeah, exactly.
Be used for me to practice on.
And it's going to be very important. So don't be afraid to keep stuff as long as it's going to stay together and practice on it. Don't just chuck it away. I won't bore you with all. I've got loads of little bits of wood that I'm never going to use for anything. But if I haven't been spindle turning for a while, I'll just chuck them up and practice my spindle work just to get used to the tool, rather than using a nice piece of wood, you know. But it's an easy cop-out, and I'm not going to keep you too long tonight, but it's an easy cop-out when you say, as an answer to something, a lot of it is personal preference. But sadly, that is a fact. There are basic rules to follow, which will get you started. There are basic rules that are needed to progress, and then it is very much personal. Very much personal. I'm going to have a vape off camera. I'll put you on to the... There we are. You can see... Oh, Mark. Oh, my God. Sorry, people.
I'm going to do that. God, yes. Dear Lord, scared everybody. You were lucky I was dressed.
Yep. Not quite as red as you were earlier, though.
Oh, shut up. If only everybody had a workshop like Mike's. Look how neat and tidy it is.
Yeah, I'm waiting for him to come down and tidy mine up, but he hasn't turned up yet.
Yeah, you can come down and do mine as well.
Well, what's part of the deal, wouldn't it? He would come tidy up for us.
Yeah. Now let's that thumbs down. God, he can hear us.
Okay. Oh, I can hear you. Yeah. Right, people. I hope that it has been of some use to you. I have to be honest, I'm not paying the old soldier, but I've had to be a little bit wary of my back, what I've done, if you like, because it tends to lock up a little bit. So it hasn't been, well, not that there's been any really good lives, but I always enjoy them. And if somebody goes away with a little bit of knowledge, then that's fine. But as I say, at any time, which very few people did, if you want me to do anything with regards to a cut and what problems you're having with a cut, we've got another sort of 10, 20 minutes. I can do that for you. If not, then we can just have a little chat and then we'll go. It's going to be about 2 or 3 weeks before my next live. I'd like to thank, I'm not saying goodbye, but I'd like to thank everybody that has turned up today, because I did let everybody down last week. Well, I didn't let them down. I gave them a breather because I didn't feel I was quite fit enough to do it. But I think now that I won't say exhausted, but the sort of beginners and intermediary turner lives, I think, have been exhausted now. And if something develops over the next few months, then I can do another one. But I think it's time to start doing projects, doing a full project from start to finish. It won't be done in an hour. And if what I tend to do is obviously get to the finishing stage of all the stages. If I don't get it finished within a certain time, then I'll have another project the next time, and I'll just finish that one off to begin with at the next one. So it'll be a continuous thing. And I might get quicker, you never know. But that's the way I think it's going to be going. But it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If somebody has a question, please ask. The lads will get it. They will either answer you themselves in the chat or ask the question to me in the middle of turning. It doesn't matter, and I'll stop and I'll answer it to the best
Mike,
of my ability.
we've had a quick question from somebody in the chat.
Yeah.
Regarding a fellow wood turner that we all know and love and respect, Robert Robertson from Australia. He was taken to hospital yesterday with a collapsed lung.
Oh my God, I didn't realise.
He's still in hospital. They were asking how he is. As far as we know, he's recovering well in hospital, and we do send him all our love and best wishes from everybody here in the UK and from around the world.
We do indeed. That goes without saying. Get well soon, Robbo. That's for sure.
He's a tough old bugger, and he'll be laughing himself silly when he hears us talking about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do wish him well. Sure, he'll be back giving everybody grief as soon as he possibly can.
And I second that as well. And I've just noticed Dave, my old mate Dave Rothwell, is here. Hello, Dave. How are you? Give my love to Fee. I'm not going to say hello to all the people that I've missed, because hopefully you have been acknowledged by my pit crew. But again,
no, we ignored them.
Well, why do I believe that, Pete? Why do I believe that? Oh, I tell you what, people, for those of you that are left, I forgot to show you in the beginning. Those of you that do watch the odd things I put up on Facebook and that, and in wood turning groups, I wet turned some eucalyptus back in May. And I've never wet turned eucalyptus before. I've only ever turned dry eucalyptus. And I was told, oh, it's going to crack and so on and so forth. And I did exactly the same method that I always do. I wet turned it, got things as evenly as I thought I could, and packed it full of shavings, stuck it in paper and stuck it away. But
Before you show these, Mike,
yeah,
take me off the screen so they can see it properly.
Okay. Mark's going now. I'm sorry about this, guys. You can uncover your eyes now. You can bring your kids out and your pets, and they won't be too afraid. Mark is going off the screen. Now they're going to be really worried because I'm here. Okay. So the first one was a hollow form, and it's quite a nice form. Well, it would have been. And then when I took it out the packing, there is the. Now I went looking for the piece, this bit of apple pie, and there isn't one. That's how it's split. We're talking about a 6-inch gap there. Now I know it's not perfectly even. I'll admit that. I'll hold my hands up to that. But no way does that constitute a crack like that, believe you me. I was amazed. I'm glad I wasn't in here when it went, because it must have made one hell of a noise as well. Now on top of that, where the wall thickness is relatively even, I got this lovely big bowl, and it's starting to, oh, you can see it. Oh, look. And there's another one. And again, no piece. It's completely and utterly ripped itself to shreds. And somebody said, oh, there's a candidate for some resin. And I've been thinking, maybe. I'm not throwing them away just yet. I won't resin them, but yeah. And I put it down to the extremely hot summer that we've had. I know you guys in the US and many other parts of the world have very hot summers, but we're not used to the sort of temperatures we were getting here so consistently. For about 2 weeks, I don't think it went down below 25, 26 degrees C. And in here, in the workshop where the stuff was, I mean, it was 31, 32, 33 degrees, and that's after I'd opened the doors up. So God knows what it was prior to me opening the doors up. It was hot. So I think it didn't have much of a chance. And yet I did do some sycamore at the same time, and that's fine, but went from 22% down to 7%. Even the sycamore did. Lost all that moisture in like 9 weeks, which is pretty quick. Pretty quick. Let's have a look. Anything else? Mr. Walt, with regards to segmented... excuse me. Yes.
Do it.
Yes. Mr. Mungum asks me, have I got any advice regarding segmented work? Yes, as my honourable friend just said, don't do it. That's the best advice I can give you. I've said it before. It's like with colouring. I want to mention colouring. I've got absolutely 100% admiration for people that do segmenting on two fronts. Number one, their expertise and their skill, and number two, their patience. And I haven't got either, and mainly patience. I've tried it, don't like it, but I do like the end result when other people have done it, but it doesn't interest me at all. As you well know, I don't colour. Or very rarely I have coloured, but I don't colour. I'm not against colour, but I prefer to see the natural wood. However, when you've got a piece of ash like that, if it hasn't got decent figure, sometimes it can be a bit like sycamore, it can be quite bland. And on two pieces, all I did was enhance the colour, and this is going back to sort of techniques, if you like, and brought out the grain. It works well on things like ash, where you can open the grain up with a bronze brush or whatever, and it's just an embellishing wax, and different colours. I mean, Hampshire Sheen do them, that's the ones I got, but there are other waxes out there, I think, that do the same thing. On that one, I did it on both sides everywhere, and on this little chappy, it really brought the grain out nicely. It highlights the grain, and I left the base natural to show the contrast. And in my opinion, that works quite nicely. It's sort of an subtle enhancement as opposed to just sort of colouring it completely. But yeah, there are those options and many other colours to use as well. So, not being a world-renowned colourist, as I was called earlier on, but I'm dipping the toe in the water on certain woods.
Just on those split bowls.
Yeah.
If you are drying wood and it is warm,
Yes.
stick a carton of water next to them. Keep the humidity up around them, and it does help. Keeps the fibers from drying too quick, and it makes them more supple, so they move rather than break.
That's a very good tip. And why I haven't thought of that myself, I don't know. Because if I do a wet turning and I can't finish it the same day, I always give it a good spray with a water sprayer, and I wrap it in cling film, leave it on the lathe, so that it holds its position till the following day. And what you're saying there is basically an extension to that. You're just keeping it moist. Yeah, a very, very, very good tip. Very good tip, Pete. Thank you for that. Take note, everybody. Rob, Mike, bad news. I started your portrait. Oh my God, it's in colour. Should have done it in black and white. Rob CP, a few months ago, I say kindly. I think it's sort of an infamous kindness, if there is such a terminology, doing a portrait of me. I'm sure I was hoping it would be a caricature, but it would be anyway, even if it was an ordinary portrait. And he's just informed me that he's doing one in colour, living colour. So
he said to me
thanks,
that
Rob.
it was going to be a fictional portrait because he's going to make you good looking.
All right. Well, I can't disagree with that, actually. I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's happened to my camera. What's happened? Oh my God, what's happened? Saves me moving. And if I leave you there, you see, it looks like Mark's having a vape.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's Mark. Hang on. Anyway, yeah, that's being childish. I'm only doing that for the couple of people that have really keep deriding me for vaping on film. You shouldn't do it, I know, but there you go. I'm amongst friends. Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. I'm really looking forward to it. But Andy Best, I need to lie down. Mike did colour. Yeah. Despite the common myth, I have done some coloured items. I got into burning stuff at one stage. I don't mean sticking it on the fire. I mean actually scorching stuff. I really got into that on quite a few ash items I did in the early days.
Mike's well known for doing colour. He painted his house, painted the doors,
Yeah,
painted the skirting boards.
all white. No, luckily we've got hardwood. We don't have to paint them. No, yes, I have done colour, but again, I get so much pleasure, and it's very old-fashioned and traditional. When you get a piece of wood that is naturally got lots of character to it, that gives me more pleasure than colouring something. But having said that, I do enjoy the act of colouring, because it's like being, as I said before, like a kid, at school, finger painting. But it's not for me in general. Let's put it that way. I showed Ruby Claire my progress, and she knew it was Mike. Oh, that's a good sign. Either that, Ruby, or you've actually got no idea what I look like.
Douglas is asking Mark if he can recommend anybody for segmented work. I would say go and look at the last year or so of Jeff Hornan, because he had never done it before last year, and he basically fallen into it big time, and he's done some good stuff. But he is showing from the beginning of the journey to where he is. So
I'll just put the name in there of somebody else called Olivier Gomez, French lad, insanely talented.
There is some phenomenal work out there, absolutely phenomenal. There's a guy that they do the wavy cutting boards and things like that, almost like a 3D effect.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is time lapse for obvious reasons, because it obviously can't be done in an hour. Sorry, Wayne, not even you could do one of them in an hour, mate. But it is phenomenal, and the big thing with it as well is accuracy of cut is so essential. And that's the thing that does my head in, if you like, is it's spot on, absolutely spot on. But
Royce Box is another one. Royce Box does some fantastic stuff.
There is some great stuff out there.
If you've got any links, feel free to stick them in the chat. But I'm sure if any of you asking the questions, I don't know who asked the question, but if you're a member of any of the wood turning clubs, wood turning communities, wood turning groups on Facebook, put a question in there and you'll be inundated with links and suggestions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. You're obviously very easily pleased. I noticed you put Mark in lowercase. See, that's where you belong, mate. Lowercase. Oh, but Brian, oh, you creep. He put it in. He put capital M. Well done, Brian. No, Mark's not causing any trouble at all. Oh, well done, Mark. Mark's put a link into Olivier Gomez.
And another one coming up.
Oh, Felicity WT has said there is a channel on YouTube called Segmented Turner. Yes, there is. I've actually seen that as well. I've watched that. Yeah. Guys, can you give some advice options on finishing a wet turn bowl? I'll kick off by saying I've only done a few finished wet turn bowls, and I normally oil them and just leave them do their thing, and they go nice and wavy. But the oil just makes it a bit more supple and less likely to crack. That's all I've got to say on the subject.
I agree with that. I would say that if you're doing a wet turned to finish bowl, you can't really be any thicker than 5 mil, and it's got to be even all the way through.
Yeah.
Any thickness in the bottom of it that's different to the wall, it will split.
Sound advice there, Pete. I wonder, going back to this now with this bowl here, It is woefully thick up here, right? I don't know what happened to my fingers there, but it is about. Actually, it looks worse than it is because it's cracked off there. It's about 2-3 mil thicker there than the rest of it here. But I mean, that is some aggressive cracking. I don't think you could have done anything with that. You could have covered it in oil. You could have taken it to bed with you for a month.
That was going to go, I think, no matter what you
Yeah,
did.
yeah. And I'll tell you what, the other, was it? Oh no, it's on the holoform. Oh, what was, this is not a holoform, this is an open-ended holoform. Look at the cracking on the side. Can you see how it's separated there as well? Look at it. Absolutely. And there, massive.
You could try drying that underwater.
I could. Yeah, there's a lot of things I could do, Pete.
But not now.
I could fly to the moon, but I'm not going to bother.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got to shoot off, mate. My insulin alarm's just gone off, so I've got to go.
Okay, Mark.
Stuff.
Thank you very much, Mark.
All right, guys.
Say good night. All the best, mate. Cheers.
Take care, mate.
Thanks for your help.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Mark's gone now. That's left Pete. I suppose we might as well wrap it up if no one else has got any more questions. Or if you've got, joking aside, really appreciate it. Andy. Well, my pleasure, and I'm sure the lads' pleasure as well.
Yeah, it is.
And as I say, thank you everybody who's turned up. I really appreciate it. And hopefully the next 2 or 3 weeks I'll have another live. I'll put it on social media. Well, that wasn't a bit of dandruff. That was a bit of chipping. I'll be doing a project. Don't know what I'll do. I might do a bowl actually. Turn a bowl from start to finish. So
Yeah.
get your popcorn in. Get a curry. 4 hours should see it easily. We'll see how we go. Okay, guys.
I get some extra beers in them.
Yeah, I'd get a keg in if I were you, to be honest with you.
Probably, yeah.
And for those of you that are still here, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll wish you a very good evening, and I'll see you as soon as I can. Cheers now. All the best.
Cheers, everyone.
And virtual camera.